When it comes to Chinese military equipment, many Westerners talk about power issues. They always think that China can't make advanced engines, and foreigners are also affected by India. Indian media once believed that China was shackled by engines. But the reality is not the case at all. Recently, the People's Liberation Army taught the Indian Army a lesson and sent G-10 to patrol the plateau area on the Sino-Indian border. This shocked the Indian media and shouted, "G-10 attacked on the plateau." This means that the so-called heart disease of G-10 has been eliminated, and there is no problem of not being able to reach the plateau at all. Indian media once believed that China was shackled by engines. Due to lack of power, the Z-10 could not reach a plateau. Now the Z-10 is free from the shackles of the engine. According to India, the China's Z-10 helicopter uses the WZ-9 engine, each generating 1350 shaft horsepower and cannot provide 6,000 meters. The above conditions of use, now the G-10 has been replaced with a new generation of WZ-16 engines, which can move freely at an altitude of more than 6,000 meters. Then you can rush to the plateau with full firepower and not be limited by power, that is, you can enter the freedom at the low altitude of the plateau. Now the use of G-10 on the plateau is no longer a problem, and the Indian Army feels a huge threat. It mainly lost the advantage in fantasy. In order to be cheap on the plateau, India invested heavily in the introduction of Apache. After comparison, India found that the Z-10 has been continuously improved, and its performance has improved rapidly, which may be more troublesome. The Indian Army has no quantitative advantage in the Z-10. There are only 28 Apaches in total, of which only 6 belong to the Indian Army Aviation. If the Indian Army needs more Apache support, it will require coordination from high-level commands, which is time-consuming, labor-intensive and easy to delay fighters. According to reports from India, the PLA has 100 Z-10s, which is several times more than India. The natural threat is huge. In fact, India has deliberately lowered the number. It has been mass-produced for many years. It is impossible for the entire army to have only 100 Z-10s. It is the question of whether the Indian Army has 100 planes in person. Perhaps even worse, the Z-10 is not fighting alone. It can be supported by the Z-19 in combat. The performance of the Z-19 is equally advanced, but it is lighter in weight and acts as a support for the Z-10 in many cases. In contrast, India's Apache lacks support forces. In the eyes of India, the PLA's 100 Z-10s combined with Z-19s have far surpassed the Indian Army in combat power, and already have the ability to conduct large-scale operations and combat. This is a huge threat. Quoting an Indian officer, China has a huge advantage over India in terms of attack helicopters. From the relevant reports in India, it can be seen that the Indian side has a lot of knowledge about the situation of G-10. According to the official announcement of the Aviation Industry Corporation of China, the infrared suppression device independently developed by the Aviation Industry Helicopter Company recently successfully completed the appraisal review. During the development process, the helicopter company conducted a large number of environmental adaptability tests, durability tests and joint ground tests. These test data clearly demonstrate that the performance and service life of this infrared suppression device meet design standards. Normally, this kind of infrared suppression device dedicated to armed helicopters is mainly used for those types of aircraft that perform missions in dangerous combat environments. The Z-10, the main armed helicopter equipped by the Chinese Army Aviation Force, will become the first batch of aircraft equipped with this technology. As we all know, armed helicopters, nicknamed treetop killers, mainly face threats from anti-aircraft artillery and man-portable air defense missiles when performing missions. Among them, individual air defense missiles using passive infrared seekers pose the most serious threat to armed helicopters. Therefore, facing the threat of individual air defense missiles has become the main problem that armed helicopters in various countries have to solve when considering survivability. In addition to the known missile approach warning systems and infrared jamming bombs, infrared suppression devices are one of the effective auxiliary measures to deal with this threat. It is worth mentioning that the domestic Z-10 armed helicopter was equipped with a simple version of the engine infrared suppression device during the early prototype flight test stage. However, due to the relative simplicity of these devices, the results are not ideal. As the Z-10 was forced to improve its design due to the embargo of the PT-6 engine, the simple version of the infrared suppression device that had previously had limited effect was cancelled. Now, the advent of a new generation of infrared suppression devices means that China has made an important breakthrough in this field. It also solves the long criticized problem of insufficient power of the Z-10. After all, even with this technology, if there is insufficient power, it will seriously affect the helicopter's endurance and maneuverability. We can confidently expect that with the equipment of infrared suppression devices, as well as the application of the previously exposed missile approach warning system and composite armor, the Z-10 will be able to achieve the same level as the Afghanistan when facing the threat of individual air defense missiles. In addition, the application field of infrared suppression devices is not limited to armed helicopters, but also has wide potential in general helicopters and special helicopters. In short, the development and equipment of this technology will significantly improve the defensive effectiveness of domestic helicopters against infrared-guided missiles, and further enhance their survivability on the battlefield. Of course, for the Z-10 armed helicopter, the introduction of the infrared suppression device is not only related to the technological breakthroughs in the Chinese aviation industry, but also closely related to the upgrade of the turboshaft 9 engine. It is foreseeable that once the shortcomings of the power system are supplemented, various new equipment will appear on the Z-10 in the future, including millimeter wave radar, photoelectric interference equipment and directional infrared interference systems, bringing us more surprises.